Oh hey, you're here. Hi, I'm Leia, also known as Jinx Rambles, and today we are discussing the books I read in January. Now I will give a PSA. One of the books I already spoke about and it will be here. Actually, I will introduce that one after. But I read 3 books, I think. We will find out right now. Now, January was a long month. It felt like it was like 5 years, and it was not. Also, I have new hair color. So according to Goodreads, I read in January, as it loads, because it always loads like 5 years. In January, I read 3 books. January was a long month. And when I say long month, my initial thing for reading however many books I wanted to read was to read 5 maybe, and that wasn't the case. So I read 3 books, and these are the 3 books I read. Anyway, I read 3 books. These are not the 3 books I read. I started this, which will be probably in February, and then I read this book. I read Reckless by Elsie Silver. I already have a thing where I spoke about it, and it will be inputted here somewhere as we go along. This was the first book I read in 2025. I read it so much that I highlighted a bunch of things, and there's no notes. This is all out of, you know, my brain, and it's coming out of my mouth. But I wanted to read this book because I have the entire series here, minus the Wild, I don't know what, the Wild Eyes, Wild Love trilogy or whatever it's gonna be, I have no idea. But I have all these, and I wanted to read them when I got all of them, because I've heard many good things about them, and they are, I guess, standalones. Like, you don't have to read them out of order. At least that's what I heard. I have no idea. And so I have all of them. And then I was like, okay, what are the tropes of all of them? Because I don't know. And I was in a moment where I really wanted to read this trope, which I think is Secret Baby or Accidental Baby, something like that. You know, I'm not at all upset that I read this as my first book of the series for this year. I'm not. I will say I rated it a certain score on my Goodreads. As I sat on it and like sat on that rating and like remembered the book, I think it's changing. And so the reason I wanted to do video after every time that I read the book, a video, is because I'm a forgetful person. I feel like a lot of people are. Maybe not everyone, but I'm a forgetful person. I will forget everything about this book after I put this down and go to the next book. Like, that's just how I am. If you haven't read it, it's a Secret Baby trope, but I feel like everyone's read this. But what I really liked about this book was, okay, so Reckless follows 2 characters. One of them is Theo, which I remembered his name. There's also a recipe at the end, which is really fun. The girl character, which is named Winter because I forgot her name. I literally was like sitting on it. I was like, ooh, I literally like this book. And then I realized I forgot the FMC's name. So that was good job for me. So it takes place Chestnut Springs, thank you very much. But Winter leaves her ex-husband, boyfriend, I don't know, fiance, husband, and goes to a town called Chestnut Springs. Now, I didn't read any of the other ones because, you know, standalones, and I was just like, you know what, I just want to read what I want to read right now. Was that a mistake on my part? Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. And I've heard everyone really loves this book, so I went with this one first. So we meet Winter. She's leaving her husband and goes and moves to Chestnut Springs. She moves from the city, she moves to Chestnut Springs. I said this twice now. There she gets back in contact with her sister, I want to say. Her sister's name is Summer. That I remember. Wow, my memory. And she meets Theo, but I don't remember how she meets Theo. Like probably like love at first sight, but not really, more like lust at first sight. Which description of him, nice. I don't remember anything though. And I kept on forgetting that she was a blonde character the entire time. I was like, oh, she has black hair. Nope, she's blonde. She's blonde. The entire time I couldn't remember that she was blonde. They hook up and then she finds out she's pregnant. But I liked how in the beginning of the book is Reckless, and he says, or she, I don't know which chapter we're in, but it says, but I've always been a little reckless. And it's literally in the book, page 19. If you have the physical copy, it's on page 19. But then we see it again. I highlighted it here. So then another time on page 387, that night we were reckless. I also like how it says you were all wild eyes, which is funny because wild, is it wild eyes? Yes, it's wild eyes. Wow. Anyway, and that was on 386, page 386. You were all wild eyes and fighting words. I thought I'd never see a more heart-stopping, fiery woman in my life. You were, well, you were mean, but I appreciated your spunk. That was the night I knew I wanted you. Now, I rated this I rated this 4 stars. There you go, 4 stars for this book. I didn't hate this book. What I didn't quite like was the smut, honestly. The overly descriptive words for the smut. Now, I love smut. I love reading smut, like the next cat. So yeah, there was a lot of smut for this book, like a lot of it, and it was so descriptive, and I was just like, okay. And I think that's where my score kind of, the more I sit on it, the less I kind of like the book. I like the book. It will probably go from 4 stars to 3.75 maybe. But other than that, like, I like this book. Smut was a little bit too much for me. Again, love smut books. And her ex-husband is Rob. If you're introducing Rob as a villain in this book and you're not giving him more villainous plot, I feel like she kind of like, in the first chapter, she like talked about Rob and said how he was this horrible man, which he is a horrible man. And then you just didn't kind of like bring him up more. Like, I feel like if you're gonna introduce this character, you should make him a little bit more villainous. My rating is going a little down, but I still love the book. Like, it was great. And mind you, the film clip I made back in the beginning, somewhere in January. The other 2 books I read in January, because we are now in February. I'm filming this in February. I read Lick by Kylie Scott. So I started reading Lick because Passionflix was making a movie about it, and I was like, I want to read this book before the movie comes out. That didn't really happen. It didn't go as planned. So I don't know when I watched it, the movie. I started this a month ago. So I tried to read it in late December. That's what I remember. So in late December or early December. Okay, the first time I tried to read this, I read it from December 7th to December 24th, and I could not keep up with it. And then Passionflix came out with it, and I watched it somewhere in January. The book was a little bit better to the movie, but it wasn't like the greatest work of art. I gave this book 3 stars. The only reason I didn't make it a little higher is that if I read the book, if I finished it the first time and then watched the movie, it would have been like so much better, I feel like. But because I watched the movie, and I don't remember after that why I gave this. I don't remember this book. That's the problem. I only remember this because of the movie. Now you might like it because it comes with like a series. I think there's like 4 books in this series. There's a 2.5, there's a 3, there's a 4, there's a 4.5, 4.6, 4.7, 4.8, 4.9. So there's 4.9. And I will say, one of the characters I loved, I just don't remember his name. I think it's Mal? I loved his characterization. I liked the writing, it was fine. It was decent because I was in a book slump in December. And I was in a continued book slump in January. So me finishing this book took me forever. And then me finishing Lick took me, I read it in January 21st to the 27th. So it didn't take me that long, but it didn't take me like 2 months to finish. So I give myself a pat on the back for that. Anyway, my next book after that was called The Air He Breathes. This is by Brittany C. Cherry. And this I actually watched again. I had a moment where I was like, because I was in a book slump, I watched movies. And I watched The Air He Breathes and I watched Lit. I forgot that The Air He Breathes was based on a book, and I watched it and then I was like, wait, this is based on a book. I should read the book. But the book I really liked. Like, I really liked. I almost gave it a 5-star, but I didn't. I gave it a 4-star. And I finished this book. So I read this from the 28th to the 31st. I finished this like on the day of the end of January. I finished this book. This book, I did not love this. I wasn't in love with this, but did I love this book? I think I loved this book. It was great. But if you don't watch the movie, do not watch the movie. Read the book, okay? Majority of the movie is the book. So if I did not watch the movie and I read the book, I feel like maybe this would have been a 5-star. The only reason it wasn't a 5-star, so brief explanation of this, it's about like grief and how these two characters, I literally cannot remember any of their names. I remember Elizabeth, and she has a daughter, and then her neighbor, who I cannot remember for the life of me. Oh, Tristan. There you go, Tristan. And they're both going through grief, and they're neighbors, and it was so heartbreaking to read. Like, you can literally tell that they were going through grief, and it was so hard to kind of get through. Mind you, it took me like a short time to read it, but whatever. It was so good. The writing was great for me. I had so many like highlights. I highlighted majority of this book. I fell in love with the idea of him first. I fell in love with the idea of a man who could someday make me laugh, smile, and cry all at once. I fell in love with the idea of I fell in love with the idea of him loving me for my brokenness, for my pained heart. I fell in love with the idea of his kisses, his touch, his warmth. And then there was another one. I think I highlighted it in a different color. Oh, I blinked and I was back, missing the smells of the past. So, I don't know. I just loved everything about this book. Now, the reason I did not give it a 4-star. You meet someone in this book who is, how should I say, a little bit crazy. You meet someone who's a little bit crazy in this book. I'm not sure I'm gonna give a spoiler, actually. You meet someone who's crazy in this book, and that's all I'll say. I think it didn't, okay, I'll scratch that. You meet someone in this book. You don't wanna know? And you don't wanna know, I don't wanna spoil this. Okay, that's it, that's all I have to say. If you decide you wanna read it, read it. I think this was it wasn't 5 stars for me because I don't wanna spoil it. But I think the writing was great. You actually know, you figure out everything, like why both the characters are going through grief. They give you like a little bit like of a backstory. It's just, I don't even know what to say. It's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking. I wouldn't say I was so sad like that I couldn't read anything after that, except I kind of couldn't, and so I decided to watch a lot of shows after I finished this story. So really, don't ask me anything. I'm kind of sad that I didn't finish the other 2 books, but I think because I was in a book slump already, I needed something to like keep me. And so because I already watched the 2 movies based on these books, I was like, oh, I already know, so I might as well just read it. Anyway, if you really like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, comment what you think I would like. Hopefully nothing sad, because I already have a sad book right here. I don't want to. I'm scared to read this. I'm really scared. And I'm really scared to read this book that you cannot see, but it's Marley and Me. I'm really scared. So these 2 books, really scared to read. I don't want to read it anytime. But we're in February, new month, new set of books. I'm hoping I can read past 3, but knowing me, I don't think I can. But I'm getting closer and closer to my goal, and that's all I can say. So thank you for watching. Enjoy your day. Bye bye.